All right, let's jump right in. In this explainer, we're going to go on a little journey to figure out the fundamental rules of the living world. You know, what actually separates something that's alive from something that's, well, not? And how in the world do scientists make sense of the incredible diversity of life all around us? So, to get started, let me throw a question at you. What do a person, a plant, and a puddle all have in common? I know, it sounds like the beginning of a really weird joke, right? But stick with me, because the answer gets right to the heart of the mystery we're trying to solve today. What is the line between life and non-life? So that brings us to our first big question. When you just look around you, how do you even start sorting things into two piles? Things that are alive and things that aren't. It turns out there's a really simple first clue. And that clue is growth. I mean, think about it. You're not wearing the same shoes you wore when you were a baby, are you? Of course not, because you grew. Your body got bigger. A pencil, on the other hand, it only ever gets smaller the more you use it. It definitely doesn't grow. And that right there is our first big rule. Anything that shows this characteristic, an increase in its size or height or just amount over time, we call that a living organism. If it grows, it's alive. If it doesn't, it's not. That's our starting point. Simple, right? Okay, so now we have a way to separate the living from the non-living. But that living pile is still absolutely gigantic. So the next logical step is to figure out how we can start sorting all of this life into big, manageable groups. And right away, two huge categories just jump out at us. The ones we can see with our own eyes every single day. Just look outside. You've got your plants, right? Things like coconut trees or papaya plants. And then you've got your animals. Everything from a deer to a butterfly to a fish. So it seems pretty simple. You've got plants and you've got animals. Case closed. But wait a second. Is that really the whole picture? Or are we maybe missing something? Could there be a whole other world out there right under our noses that we just can't see? The answer to that is a huge, resounding yes. If you took just a single drop of pond water or maybe a tiny pinch of soil and you put it under a powerful microscope, you would find a whole bustling city of tiny little creatures. These are the microorganisms, the invisible rulers of our planet. So here's the big takeaway from this part. All known life here on Earth can be sorted into one of three major groups. You have the plants, you have the animals, and you have this vast, unseen empire of the microorganisms, the big three. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. It doesn't matter if you're a giant sequoia tree, a lion, or a single-celled amoeba. You're all playing by the exact same set of rules. It's like a secret biological code that defines what it even means to be alive. Now, sure, scientists love to argue about the weird edge cases, like viruses, which kind of break the rules because they can't reproduce on their own. But for pretty much everything else, this code is law. And here they are, the 5 fundamental rules of being alive. We already talked about growth, but to be officially in the living club, you also have to show nutrition, movement, respiration, and reproduction. Let's break those down real quick. First up, nutrition, which is just a fancy way of saying how you get food. And there are really only 2 main strategies. You can be an autotroph, a self-feeder, like a plant that just soaks up sunlight and makes its own food. Pretty cool. Or you can be a heterotroph, an other feeder, like an animal that has to eat other things to get energy. Next is movement. And now, this doesn't just mean running around, which scientists call locomotion. Nope, every single living thing moves in some way. A plant on your windowsill will literally bend itself toward the sunlight. A sea anemone that's stuck to a rock will still wave its tentacles around. It's a universal feature of life. Rule number 4 is respiration. And this is a super important point. It is not the same thing as breathing. Breathing is just moving air in and out. Respiration is the chemical reaction that happens inside your cells, where you use oxygen to unlock the energy from your food. Both plants and animals do this. It's how we power ourselves. And that brings us to the final rule, reproduction. Look, every individual organism has a limited time on this planet. So, for life itself to keep going, organisms have to be able to make new, younger versions of themselves. It's absolutely essential for the survival of any species. Okay, so now we know the 3 big domains of life and the 5 rules they all have to follow. So let's zoom back in on the 2 groups we can actually see, plants and animals, and put them side by side. It really makes their key differences pop. When you look at it like this, it's pretty clear, right? Animals move around, plants are fixed. Plants make their own food with that green stuff, chlorophyll. Animals gotta go find theirs. But here's a really fascinating one: growth. A plant's growth is basically unlimited. It just keeps going its whole life. But an animal's growth, it's limited. We grow for a while and then we stop. Okay, so there are literally millions of different species out there. How on earth does a biologist know what's what? How do they identify one specific plant or animal from another? Well, they don't just guess. They have a really clever tool that helps them sort through this incredible diversity. And that tool is called a dichotomous key. Honestly, the best way to think about it is like a choose-your-own-adventure book for identifying living things. It just gives you a series of simple, paired yes or no questions that lead you step by step to the right answer. You know what? Let's just try one. Let's pretend we found some mystery animal. The key starts us off with a really simple, obvious question. Does it have 4 legs? Yes or no? Okay, for our mystery animal, let's say the answer is no. Right away, we've eliminated a whole bunch of animals, like dogs and deer and cats. So the key tells us to go down the no path, and it gives us our next question. Does it have wings? All right, let's say the answer is yes, it does have wings. Okay, we're getting so close now. We've narrowed it down to just a couple of possibilities. Maybe it's a crow, maybe it's a parrot. So the key gives us one last super specific question to seal the deal. Does it have a curved beak? And if the answer is yes, then congratulations. You've just identified a parrot. See how that works? It's just a simple, logical process of elimination that lets anyone, even you and me, navigate the amazing complexity of the living world. Pretty brilliant. So think about how far we've come. We started with the difference between a child and a pencil, and we ended up with the 3 great domains of life and the 5 rules they all have to follow. We've built a framework for understanding life here on Earth. But it leaves us with one last, massive question to think about. If we ever find life somewhere else, out there in the cosmos, do you think it'll be playing by these same rules?